Picture this, okay? You've got your headphones in.
Oh, yeah. The classic commuter bubble.
Exactly. It's a Tuesday commute, and you are just completely locked into your own internal monologue.
Right.
You're like analyzing some massive spreadsheet from work. Or maybe you're planning tonight's dinner.
Or just worrying about that one stray email you forgot to send.
Yeah, exactly. Just totally in your own world.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, boom, a stranger steps directly into your path.
Yep.
They wave a hand, and they just go, "Excuse me."
And your heart just does that little jump, right?
It really does. The headphones come out, and you were just instantly yanked out of your private universe.
Thrust right onto the public stage.
Yeah. You have a fraction of a second to orient yourself, process their question, and, formulate an answer.
And you have to deliver it in a way that's actually helpful and polite.
Right. Which is hard enough, honestly. But now, imagine doing all of that in your second language.
Oh, man. That moment, like that split second free, that is where the illusion of textbook fluency just completely shatters.
It really is.
It's basically the ultimate stress test for your linguistic nervous system.
Which is exactly what we're getting into today. Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. We are cracking open this really fascinating guide on mastering unscripted, spontaneous English.
Right. We're looking at those specific moments where your flashcards just totally fail you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Where you have to rely on pure linguistic instinct. Because, well, there's this paradox for you, the listener, right?
Yeah, the proficiency paradox.
Right. You might be operating at a highly, highly proficient level. Like you can digest a dense academic paper.
Or present a whole slide deck to a room full of executives.
Yeah. Or follow the winding plot of like a deeply philosophical film.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment a tourist stops you near the subway to ask for directions,
or someone at a cafe just asks, what you're eating.
your brain just completely empties out. It's gone.
And it empties out because you are dealing with two entirely different cognitive processes.
Wait, really? How so?
Well, think about it. Giving a presentation or writing an email that's controlled, it happens in the prefrontal cortex, which is like the planning center of your brain. You have the luxury of time, structure, and anticipation.
Oh, I see. But the street encounter is different.
Completely different. A stranger stopping you on the street triggers the amygdala.
Which is the fear center, right?
Exactly. It's essentially a mild threat response. You aren't just processing syntax anymore, you are managing surprise.
Wow.
Yeah, you're managing spatial awareness, social dynamics all at once. So what we're analyzing today isn't grammar.
Right. It's bigger than that.
Way bigger. We are analyzing C1 and C2 level pragmatics.
Okay, let's actually define that for a second because we throw the word pragmatics around a lot.
We do, yeah.
But it really is the invisible engine of fluency. I mean, we aren't just talking about syntax here, right? Like putting nouns and verbs in the right order.
Right, not at all. Pragmatics is basically the study of how context dictates meaning.
Okay, so reading the room.
Exactly. It's your ability to read a room, understand the unspoken social contracts, and, choose words that build a relationship.
Rather than just transmitting raw data like a robot.
Yeah. It's the difference between telling someone the food here is cheap and the neighborhood is dangerous.
Which is super blunt.
Right. Versus navigating those realities with tact and diplomacy.
So to explore this, the source material we have drops us into 3 distinct scenarios, which is great.
They map out a really fascinating progression, I think.
They really do. So first, we're going to move from navigating physical geography, like giving directions,
right,
to the much harder task of navigating sensory geography.
Oh, yeah, like food and taste. That is so tough.
And finally, we'll get to the ultimate test, which is navigating emotional geography through unstructured small talk.
The absolute hardest part.
Seriously. And our mission today is to extract the underlying frameworks of these interactions.
So that the next time someone taps you on the shoulder, you aren't just scrambling for a script.
Exactly. You actually have a strategy. So let's jump right in. Let's start with the physical.
Perfect. So the first scenario in our source material takes place in a very familiar modern habitat, honestly.
Oh, yeah. The co-working space.
Right. It is basically a breeding ground for the unexpected conversational pivot.
It totally is. So we have 2 characters here. There's Sarah, and she's a remote worker doing the whole slow travel thing.
Spending like a month in each hub.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And she's just arrived, completely unmoored, just trying to get her bearings.
And sitting nearby is Pablo, who is a local.
Right. So Sarah does that classic lean over, apologizes for interrupting, and she asks him, Do you happen to know if there's a decent spot to grab a bite around here?
Which is, I mean, it is the most mundane question imaginable.
Totally.
And if we look at how a beginner or honestly even an intermediate speaker handles this, it's purely transactional.
Like, yes, go down the street, turn left, there is a good restaurant.
Right. It transmits the data, it gets the job done, but it completely ignores the human context of the person asking.
But Pablo doesn't do that.
No, he doesn't. He pauses, assesses the situation, and before he offers a single restaurant name, he asks her a question.
Right. He says, you're actually spoiled for choice around here, but it really boils down to what you're craving. Are you looking for a quick dash, or do you have time for a proper sit-down meal?
And that right there, that immediate pivot.
Answering a question with a clarifying question.
Exactly. It is a masterstroke of pragmatic fluency.
It really reminds me of watching a really good UI or UX designer build a user flow for an app.
Oh, that's a great analogy. How so?
Well, like a bad designer just throws 100 options on the screen and completely overwhelms the user.
Right, just total choice paralysis.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But a great designer asks you one or two filtering questions first, reducing the friction, and then they curate the experience.
That's exactly what Pablo is doing. He is reducing Sarah's cognitive friction.
Because he knows giving her a recommendation for this, like brilliant 2-hour tapas place, is actively unhelpful if she has a Zoom meeting in 40 minutes.
Exactly. He is diagnosing her constraints. By establishing those parameters, quick dash versus sit-down meal, he is no longer just a local dispensing geographic data.
Right. He's shifted his role.
He has transformed into a collaborator. He is actively partnering with her to solve her specific lunch problem.
Which instantly builds rapport, right?
Absolutely. Because it signals a high degree of social empathy. He is acknowledging her reality.
So Sarah tells him she has a 40-minute window. She wants something satisfying but not elaborate.
So now Pablo has his parameters.
Right. And he directs her to this independent eatery a couple blocks away. But it's how he describes the visual aesthetic of this restaurant that really stands out to me.
This part is brilliant.
Yeah, he tells her, it's incredibly unassuming from the outside. Honestly, you might walk right past it, but the food is spectacular.
Unassuming from the outside. Let's look at the pragmatic machinery operating beneath that phrase, because it is doing a lot of heavy lifting.
It really is.
If you are recommending an authentic local spot, it frequently won't look like a Michelin-starred establishment.
No, it might look a bit run down or poorly lit or just totally unremarkable.
Right. So if you're blunt, you might say, it looks terrible, but eat there anyway.
Which, I mean, that creates immediate hesitation for the listener.
It triggers skepticism.
Right.
But instead, Pablo uses high-level expectation management. There's this concept in linguistics called politeness theory, and it talks a lot about saving face.
Saving face. Right.
Pablo is saving face for the restaurant, protecting its dignity, while simultaneously protecting Sarah from disappointment when she actually arrives.
He's framing the lack of visual appeal not as a flaw, but as like a hallmark of its authenticity.
Yes. He's letting her in on a secret.
Like, the peeling paint isn't a lack of hygiene. It's just proof that they focus all their energy on the kitchen.
Exactly. He is softening the edges of reality without lying. And this is such a crucial tool in your mental arsenal.
Because when you're communicating across cultures, managing visual or experiential expectations diplomatically, that prevents culture shock.
It absolutely does.
But, okay, the stakes get a lot higher immediately after this lunch chat.
Oh, right. The safety question?
Yeah. Sarah has her lunch recommendation, but then she asks a much heavier question. She asks if the neighborhood in general is safe to wander around.
Which is a pragmatic minefield.
Total minefield. You want to be honest, you want to protect this person, but you do not want to induce panic.
You are constantly balancing truth-telling with emotional regulation, and Pablo handles it beautifully.
He really does. He starts by building a baseline of security first.
Right. He says, by and large, absolutely. During the day, it's a remarkably vibrant area.
So he anchors her in safety before introducing any sort of caveat.
And then the caveat comes.
Right. He tells her that after dusk, she should stick to the main thoroughfares because some of the side alleys can feel a tad unsavory late at night.
Okay, the word unsavory is fascinating here.
I love this word choice.
It originates from taste. Right, like something literally unpleasant to put in your mouth. But metaphorically, it shifts to describe moral ambiguity or subtle danger.
Yeah, it's so descriptive without being aggressive.
And by pairing it with a tad unsavory, he is aggressively downplaying the severity.
Right. He isn't saying you will be mugged.
No.
He's saying the vibe gets a little weird.
Exactly, because inducing paranoia serves absolutely no one, And then he caps this off with a really brilliant idiom.
Oh, right. He says, nothing overtly dangerous, just keep your wits about you.
Your wits about you. It is such a sturdy, reliable piece of advice.
What makes it work so well pragmatically?
Well, it implies capability. When you tell someone to keep their wits about them, you are inherently validating their intelligence.
That's so true.
You are saying, you are a smart, observant person, just keep those observational skills turned on.
You're treating the visitor as an empowered adult.
Exactly. Rather than a fragile tourist who needs to be coddled.
Wait, hold on, though. Let me push back on this for a second.
Sure.
Is this actually a language skill, or are we just describing a guy who happens to have really high emotional intelligence?
That's a fair question.
Because when Pablo finishes the safety talk, he pivots again. He asks if Sarah is stationed here for a long-term project or just passing through. Is he executing a calculated, C1 linguistic strategy, or is he just a friendly guy making conversation?
Well, the reality is that at the highest levels of proficiency, language and cultural intuition become pretty much indistinguishable.
Interesting.
Pablo isn't consciously parsing his syntax, right, or thinking about pragmatic theory in real time.
Right, he's not like, time to deploy saving phase.
Exactly. But the reason his English sounds so sophisticated to our ears is because he has totally internalized the sociolinguistic norms of a conversational off-ramp.
A conversational off-ramp.
Yeah. Asking if she is stationed here or passing through is a mechanism. It hands her the microphone.
Nice.
She can give a one-word answer and easily end the interaction, or she can step onto that off-ramp and start talking about her life.
So true fluency is knowing how to open doors for people without forcing them to walk through.
That's a great way to put it, yes.
Okay, before we leave Pablo and Sarah, there is this one moment in the source material that I absolutely love because it gets so incredibly meta.
Oh, the menu part?
Yes. Sarah confesses that navigating the menu at this restaurant might be tough because her Spanish is basically non-existent.
Right.
And Pablo, using his flawless, highly advanced English, tells her not to sweat it. He advises her to rely on the universal language of pointing and smiling.
I love that. He uses supreme linguistic mastery to give her permission to be entirely nonverbal.
It's so brilliant. I mean, have you ever had one of those moments abroad where language just completely failed you?
Oh, absolutely. I vividly remember being in rural Japan once.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was miles away from any English signage whatsoever, and I walked into this tiny, tiny diner, and I had absolutely zero Japanese.
That is terrifying.
It was. The owner didn't speak a word of English. I felt that intense flush of embarrassment, that fear of being the ignorant tourist.
Totally. What did you do?
Well, the owner just smiled, walked me over to the front window where they had those plastic replica food models.
Oh, I love those.
Right. And he just handed me a pair of tongs. I pointed, he nodded, I bowed, he laughed.
It's amazing.
It was honestly one of the most successful transactions of my entire trip.
And that is the exact relief Pablo is offering Sarah in this scene.
Yeah.
He is validating her anxiety and offering a really pragmatic, analog solution.
Because sometimes the absolute highest form of communication is knowing when words are totally unnecessary.
Yeah. So Pablo successfully navigated Sarah through the physical landscape of her neighborhood.
He managed her safety, her lunch, and her social anxiety.
But physical geography is relatively objective, isn't it? Like a street is a street. A dark alley is a dark alley.
Exactly. The pragmatic challenge scales up exponentially when you have to guide someone through an entirely subjective sensory experience.
Which brings us perfectly to our next section, the geography of taste. We are moving from giving basic directions to articulating the invisible. This is where language often breaks down, even for native speakers, right?
Because human language is remarkably impoverished when it comes to olfactory and gustatory sensations, smell and taste.
That's so true.
We have countless words for visual input, but when it comes to flavor, we almost always rely on metaphor or analogy.
Right, we say something tastes like chicken, or it smells like rain.
Exactly. Translating these inherently abstract sensory experiences into a second language requires a deep, really flexible lexicon.
So our source material introduces us to Grace, who is heading to Southeast Asia in a fortnight.
And she's super intimidated by the food scene.
Terrified of sensory overload.
Yeah.
So she consults her colleague, Min, who is intimately familiar with the cuisine.
Right. And Min has this terrifying task of streamlining an incredibly complex food culture into these digestible linguistic bites.
And notice that Min doesn't just list ingredients. She doesn't just say, this has noodles and fish.
No, she acts as a cultural sommelier.
Her description of pad thai is the perfect example of this. She doesn't just say it has peanuts and bean sprouts. She calls it a gateway dish.
The metaphor of a gateway is so powerful here.
It really is.
It implies a threshold, right?
Yeah.
It tells Grace, this is safe, this is approachable. But it also signals that it's a starting point that will inevitably lead you deeper into the cuisine.
It totally manages the psychological apprehension of trying new food.
It does. It gives her a safe entry point.
And then Min breaks down the flavor profile. She notes the savory base, the subtle sweetness, and that brilliant textural crunch of the peanuts.
She's engaging multiple senses. It isn't just about the tongue. It's about the auditory and physical sensation of the crunch.
Yeah. But where Min really flexes her pragmatic muscles is when she tries to describe Tom Khan's soup.
Oh, this is a fascinating linguistic moment.
She describes the fragrance, the infusion of galangal, the citrusy tang of the lemongrass.
And then she just hits a linguistic wall.
Yeah. She says, it's quite difficult to articulate, but it is deeply comforting.
This is a profound conversational maneuver.
Wait, really? Admitting you don't have the words is profound.
Yes. Think about it. When language learners hit a wall, their instinct is usually to panic, right? To fumble for some clumsy synonym or to just fall back on, it's good.
Oh, absolutely. Admitting a lack of vocabulary usually feels like a massive failure.
But Min leans right into it. By openly stating it is difficult to articulate, she achieves two huge things. First, she builds immense trust through authenticity.
Okay, I see that.
Second, she actually elevates the status of the dish.
Ah, she's saying the soup transcends language. The vocabulary doesn't exist because the experience is just too profound.
Precisely. And then she immediately pivots from the sensory to the emotional, deeply comforting.
Wow.
She can't explain the chemistry of the taste, so she explains the psychological effect of eating it.
That is the hallmark of a C1 or C2 speaker, isn't it?
It is. If you lack the vocabulary for the object, you just describe the shadow the object casts on your emotions.
The shadow the object casts. I love that phrasing. But, you know, it's not all comforting soups for Grace.
No, definitely not.
Grace asks about the spice levels, specifically regarding samtam, the green papaya salad.
Right. And Min warns her that it can pack a serious punch and that Thai spice exists on an entirely different echelon.
An entirely different echelon. That's intense.
She is intentionally recalibrating Grace's internal scale. What Grace considers spicy back in her hometown is totally irrelevant now.
Right.
Min is establishing a new paradigm so Grace doesn't confidently order something that physically incapacitates her.
Which is very kind of her.
Yeah.
But I think the real masterpiece of diplomatic language comes when Min discusses the fermented condiments.
Oh, the fish sauces and shrimp pastes.
Yeah, which are foundational to the cuisine, but they can be deeply, deeply shocking to a Western palate.
Absolutely.
Min describes them as very much an acquired taste.
The diplomacy of disgust.
It is brilliant. I mean, if an expat friend visits you and asks about a local delicacy that, yeah, smells like old gym socks.
Right, like hakarl in Iceland or maybe durian in Malaysia.
Yeah. How do you warn them without insulting your own culture?
Well, you certainly cannot use words like gross or rotten because you are passing a value judgment on the host culture.
Right, it's deeply offensive.
The phrase acquired taste is sociolinguistic magic
So.
because it removes the flaw from the food entirely and places the burden of appreciation onto the consumer.
Oh. You were telling them the food is a complex masterpiece, you just haven't leveled up enough to understand it yet.
Exactly, like drinking a heavily peated scotch or a really bitter espresso.
It implies sophistication.
It does. It warns Grace that her initial reaction might be revulsion, but it frames that revulsion as a lack of experience rather than a defect in the cuisine. It is culturally protective and highly, highly pragmatic.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
So Min navigates the menu flawlessly, but then Grace asks about the logistics of street food hygiene.
The ultimate tourist anxiety.
Yes. And Min gives her a set of rules. She says it's overwhelmingly safe, provided Grace exercises a modicum of common sense. She tells her to gravitate towards vendors with a perpetual queue and to absolutely avoid food that is languishing in the midday sun.
Okay, the lexical density here is just gorgeous. Modicum, gravitate, perpetual queue, languishing.
Wait, let me challenge this for a second.
Please do.
If I'm sitting on like a wobbly plastic stool in a humid, noisy alleyway, eating noodles out of a styrofoam bowl,
Yeah.
isn't using a phrase like languishing in the midday sun incredibly pretentious? Like, why is Min using Shakespearean vocabulary to describe street food. Why not just say, hey, don't eat old food?
That's a really great observation, and it speaks directly to the concept of register in linguistics.
Register.
Yeah, register is basically the level of formality you use. What Min is doing here is intentionally clashing register.
Clashing them.
She is taking highly elevated formal vocabulary and purposely applying it to a gritty, mundane scenario.
Like wearing a tuxedo to a dive bar.
Exactly. And the result of that intentional clash is humor. It's stylistic flair.
Oh, so it's a joke.
Right. When you are so comfortable in a second language that you can play with the contrast between your vocabulary and your environment, you signal absolute mastery.
So she isn't being pretentious.
Not at all. She is using linguistic irony to make her survival tips memorable. Grace will remember the image of a skewer languishing much better than just food that's been sitting out.
That is so true. The imagery just sticks with you.
It does.
All right, so Min equips Grace with a conceptual framework for her journey. She maps the flavors and the logistics. But the source material takes us to one final scenario.
Right. The trip actually happens.
The sensory overload is experienced, the physical geography is navigated. But what happens when it's all over?
We arrive at the architecture of unstructured conversation.
We are moving from structured advice, which has a clear objective, to the open-ended void of the departure debrief.
The absolute void.
This is the scenario that terrifies people the most. Small talk.
It terrifies people because there is no task.
Right.
When you are giving directions or recommending a restaurant, the conversation has a natural finish line. Once the information is transferred, you can just leave.
You've done the job.
But small talk has no finish line. The goal is the connection itself.
I always compare it to jazz improvisation.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, giving a presentation is like playing classical music from sheet music.
Here.
You practice, you hit the notes, you know exactly how it ends.
Very predictable.
But small talk is jazz.
Yeah.
You have to know your scales, your grammar, and vocabulary so instinctively that you don't even think about them.
Right.
You just listen to the cues the other person is playing and you riff off them in real time.
And a good jazz session requires an anchor. In our final scene, we have Adelina, who is a local, talking to Alejandro, a tourist who is packing up to head to the airport.
Okay.
Adelina initiates the jazz session, but she doesn't use the standard lazy opening.
She doesn't just say, "Did you have a good time?"
Because that's a closed loop. Yes, I did. End of conversation.
Right, there's nowhere to go from there.
Instead, she asks, how has the trip treated you?
Oh, I see. It personifies the city.
Exactly. It makes the trip an active participant in his life.
And Alejandro responds super enthusiastically. He says it was phenomenal and that it vastly surpassed my expectations, to be quite frank.
Now, Adelina catches that phrase, expectations, and she pulls the thread.
Yeah, she asks them, what were your preconceived notions?
This right here is the engine of sustained small talk, active emotional listening.
Because she isn't just waiting for her turn to speak.
Not at all. She hears the emotional undercurrent that he had anxieties or assumptions that were proven wrong, and she invites him to tell the story of his internal paradigm shift.
Asking about preconceived notions is essentially saying, tell me how you changed.
It demands a narrative response.
And Alejandro steps right into that narrative.
Mm-hmm.
He explains that people warned him the city was chaotic and a nightmare to navigate.
But he found his own rhythm, didn't he?
He did. He avoided the metro, opting to walk, which allowed him to stumble upon obscure pockets of the city.
And he observes that the locals felt incredibly grounded without a pervasive sense of urgency.
That is articulating a cultural atmosphere with real precision.
It really is.
And he also discusses the food, noting that he went in blind, totally ignored the guidebooks, and just let his instincts guide him to a nameless, hole-in-the-wall joint that turned out to be a culinary triumph.
Again, we see that juxtaposition of the gritty hole in the wall with the elevated culinary triumph.
It's that register clash again.
Exactly.
But the conversation takes a massive turn here, and I think this is really the psychological core of the entire deep dive.
Oh, definitely.
Adelina asks him about the downsides. She explicitly says, be brutally honest. And Alejandro actually is. He drops the facade entirely.
He shares his disaster story.
He does. He confesses that the oppressive humidity nearly broke him. He recounts a day where his phone died, he got hopelessly lost, and he felt a genuine wave of panic.
Which is such a vulnerable thing to admit.
It really is.
Yeah.
Why is he doing this? Because the instinct as a tourist, especially when speaking a second language, is to present an immaculate front.
Right. You want to prove you handled the city perfectly.
Exactly. You want to look capable.
But presenting a flawless front is a deeply alienating conversational strategy.
Really?
Yeah. If you only broadcast your triumphs, you force the listener into the role of a spectator. They can applaud you, but they can't connect with you.
Oh, wow. It's like the Instagram feed version of a conversation. It's sterile.
Exactly. Brené Brown's research on vulnerability applies perfectly to sociolinguistics here.
How so?
When Alejandro admits that he was sweating profusely, technologically stranded, and absolutely terrified, he suddenly becomes universally human.
Adelina can empathize with that.
Every local has been lost or overwhelmed by the weather in their own city at some point.
Right.
By lowering his armor, he allows her to step into the conversation as an equal. Shared struggle cements human connection much faster than shared success ever could.
But isn't there a risk here? Like, of sounding like a whining tourist?
It is a delicate balance.
Because how do you complain about a local city right to their face without crossing the line into disrespect?
It's all in the resolution of the story, the reframe.
The reframe. Okay.
Alejandro doesn't end the story with the panic. He explains that because he was lost, he had to swallow his pride and approach a stranger for help.
Ah, right. And he mentions the comical pantomime session they had because neither spoke the other's language.
He highlights the absurdity of the situation. He laughs at himself, and then he delivers the crucial reframe.
Right. He says, looking back, that serendipitous encounter was actually one of the highlights of the trip.
He takes a moment of sheer logistical terror and frames it as a serendipitous encounter, a happy accident.
He proves his resilience and his appreciation for the host culture.
He's essentially saying, your city broke me down, but your people built me back up, and I cherish the experience.
That is the most endearing way a foreigner can possibly speak about a host country.
It really is.
I want to linger on that comical pantomime session detail, though, because it beautifully echoes what Pablo told Sarah in the very first scene.
Oh, about the universal language of pointing and smiling.
Yes. Here is Alejandro, who is clearly deploying massive C1, C2 vocabulary, using words like serendipitous, pervasive, preconceived.
Very high-level stuff.
And yet, the pinnacle of his emotional journey was a moment where words failed completely.
It forces us to confront a pretty profound truth.
What's that?
Linguistic proficiency is just a tool. The ultimate goal is human connection.
Wow. Yeah.
Sometimes that requires a brilliant deployment of pragmatic vocabulary, and sometimes it requires the humility to abandon words altogether, wave your arms around, and just laugh with a stranger.
Adelina totally validates his experience, agreeing that the hiccups are always the anecdotes you cherish the most.
And then Alejandro gracefully exits the conversation.
He does. He says he feels he's barely scratched the surface and that a return trip is definitely on the cards.
He leaves Adelina feeling appreciated, and he walks away having transformed a purely transactional visit into a relational memory.
So, if we pull back and look at the entire architecture of what we've discussed today,
From Pablo in the co-working space, to Min dissecting the menu, to Alejandro at the departure gate,
there really is a unifying philosophy here.
there is. The goal is never to memorize scripts.
Because scripts are fragile, right?
Exactly. The real world shatters them in seconds. The goal is to internalize these frameworks.
Right. You want to deeply understand the mechanics of reducing cognitive friction for a listener.
You need the diplomacy of managing cultural expectations.
The linguistic irony of clashing registers.
And the absolute magnetic power of vulnerability.
You want to build a mental arsenal.
So that when the headphones come out and that stranger interrupts your Tuesday commute.
You aren't searching for a sentence. You are reaching for a strategy.
And the beautiful thing about these strategies is that they require you to step outside your own head.
They really do. You have to observe the other person's constraints.
Anticipate their anxieties.
And actively listen for the emotional threads in their answers.
Which brings us to a final, pretty provocative thought, I think.
Yeah, I want to leave you, the listener, with this. We have spent this entire deep dive analyzing the immense cognitive effort it takes to be diplomatic, highly observant, and vulnerable in a second language.
It demands a deeply heightened state of empathy.
Exactly. So here's the question. If the linguistic relativity hypothesis is true,
Meaning, if the way we use language genuinely shapes the architecture of our thoughts.
Right. Does the grueling effort required to master this kind of empathetic communication in a second language actually bleed over?
Oh, that's fascinating.
By practicing how to hold space for others in a foreign tongue, do we inadvertently become more observant, diplomatic, and deeply connected human beings in our native languages, too?
Wow. By learning how to speak a new language, you might actually just be learning how to be a better listener in general.
Something to mull over the next time you're walking down the street, entirely in your own world, and someone steps into your path. You might just be ready for them.
Usually when we talk about something like a medical diagnosis, there's this really comforting expectation of precision.
Right, yeah. Like it's an exact science.
Exactly. It feels like engineering. You break your arm, you go to the hospital, and the x-ray shows that jagged white line on the black background.
Right. Yeah.
And the doctor just points at it and says, there it is. That is the problem. It's just entirely binary.
It's visible, it's categorized, and it's completely indisputable. I mean, a broken bone doesn't have an ego that you need to tiptoe around.
No, not at all.
You'll have to worry about offending the fibula when you put a cast on it.
Right. But then, you step out of the hospital and into the world of nuanced, spontaneous human interaction, especially in like a high-stakes professional setting.
Oh, yeah. That's a whole different ballgame.
It really is. Suddenly that x-ray machine is completely useless. You are standing in this diagnostic landscape of communication that is just entirely murky.
Very murky.
You're trying to figure out what's really being said, what the hidden expectations are. And honestly, one wrong word can fracture a professional relationship.
Yeah, there is no cast you can put on that.
Exactly. Which brings us to our deep dive today. We're looking at some really fascinating source material from a Podzone session.
Which is such a great source, by the way.
It is, and they dissect this exact phenomenon. They're tackling the absolute highest echelons of professional English, what linguists often refer to as C1 or C2 level fluency.
Right, the top tier.
But what the source material argues, and I find this so fascinating, is that, true, top-tier fluency has almost nothing to do with, memorizing complex vocabulary?
No, it really doesn't. Because learning textbook language is ultimately just functional.
Right.
I mean, it gets you the restaurant, it helps you order the chicken, it gets you through the door of the company.
Yeah, the basics.
But textbook grammar absolutely does not help you survive when you are suddenly ambushed by a senior colleague in the hallway.
Oh, the hallway ambush.
Right. When they ask you a loaded question about a failing project.
And that is the mission of our analysis today. We are going to extract and decode the secret linguistic tools, the specific phrases, and honestly, the underlying psychological frameworks that you need to navigate these nuanced social dynamics on the fly.
Because that's what it is. It's psychology.
Right. So we're going to break down 3 incredibly relatable, completely unscripted scenarios from the source material.
And they are very relatable.
We'll look at how to deliver an impromptu pitch when you're caught off guard.
Yeah.
We'll look at how to delicately decline an unreasonable demand on your time without creating an enemy, obviously.
Essential skill.
And finally, how to retroactively diffuse a subtle misunderstanding before it completely destroys a working relationship.
I mean, we have all had that terrifying moment, haven't we?
Oh, absolutely.
You're holding a coffee, your guard is completely down, you're just thinking about what you're going to have for lunch.
Just minding your own business.
Right. And suddenly, your boss's boss is standing right in front of you, asking for a strategic update.
The panic is real.
The fight or flight response just kicks in immediately. You freeze. You struggle to find the exact right words to sound polite, but also, assertive and competent.
It is a universally awful feeling, but thankfully, the source material provides a blueprint for this.
It really does.
So let's just jump straight into the first scenario they provide, which perfectly encapsulates that hallway ambush we were just talking about.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we've got 2 professionals, Marcus and Chloe.
Let's set the physical scene first, because the environment heavily dictates the psychological pressure here.
Good point.
They are in the queue of a bustling coffee shop in a business district. So the ambient noise is high, espresso machines are hissing, people are rushing around.
A lot of distraction.
Exactly. Now, Marcus and Chloe, they know each other virtually. They've been on the same sprawling email chains, maybe see each other's tiny little squares on a video call.
Right, but they don't really know each other.
No. This is their very first face-to-face interaction.
And it's entirely spontaneous. There's no agenda. Marcus spots Chloe, approaches her, And after, a very brief hello, he goes straight to business.
Straight into it.
He tells her that he recalls she is, quote, spearheading the new digital transition at the Apex initiative. And he asks how it's, quote, panning out.
Okay, so before we even look at Chloe's response, the framing Marcus uses here is actually quite loaded.
It really is.
Let's look at the psychology of the word spearheading. It originates from military terminology, right?
The tip of the spear.
Exactly. To spearhead something is to be the tip of the spear in an advancing army. It's a very aggressive, forward-moving concept.
Yeah.
By using it, Marcus is respectfully acknowledging her leadership role. But he is also putting the weight of the project's success entirely on her shoulders in this exact conversational moment.
That's a lot of pressure to drop on someone holding a latte.
It is. And then he asks how it is panning out, which, brings to mind the gold rush, sifting through dirt hoping to find something valuable. Right. He's essentially asking, are you finding the gold or are you just washing dirt?
Wow. So Chloe is standing there holding her paper cup, and she suddenly has to deliver this elevator pitch. She has to explain a highly complex technical job role concisely.
And the source explicitly notes the danger here. She has to do this without sounding like she's just reading from a corporate brochure.
Right, because that's the trap of the spontaneous encounter, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. When the human brain panics, it seeks safety in the familiar.
Yeah.
And for professionals, the familiar is their formal, memorized job description. But if Chloe spits out this robotic, jargon-filled mission statement in a coffee shop, she immediately alienates Marcus.
It just shows a total lack of situational awareness.
Exactly.
But her composure in the transcript is really remarkable. First, she normalizes the interaction. She tells him his name, rings a bell, and casually asks what brings him to this neck of the woods.
She warms up the atmosphere.
Yeah, she de-escalates the formal tone. But when she pivots to actually answering his question about the project, she uses this incredible phrase. She says, in layman's terms, I act as the bridge between the development team and the stakeholders.
In layman's terms. I mean, the sheer density of professional competence she projects with that single prefacing phrase is just astounding.
See, I want to challenge that slightly.
Oh,
Because if someone walks up to me and says, let me put this in layman's terms for you, my immediate reaction might be a little defensive.
okay, I can see that.
It can sound a little condescending, right? Like they're saying, let me dumb this down for your tiny brain. So why doesn't it come off that way here?
That is a really brilliant point, and it comes down to the directionality of the phrase.
Directionality, what do you mean?
If I say, let me explain this to you in layman's terms, then yes, it is condescending. I am assessing your intelligence and finding it lacking. But Chloe doesn't do that. She applies the phrase to her own role. She says, in layman's terms, I act as the bridge. She's making a meta-statement about the complexity of her environment, not about Marcus's intelligence.
I see. Okay, so she's signaling, my daily reality is drowning in highly specialized, complex technical knowledge. However, because I possess high emotional intelligence and I respect our casual setting, I'm going to distill my vast, chaotic reality into a simple concept.
Exactly. It proves she understands both the micro details of the code and the macro vision required to explain it to a human being holding a coffee.
It's quiet confidence.
Yes. She doesn't need to use big words to prove she's smart.
And the metaphor she chooses to explain her role is just fantastic. I act as the bridge. When I was reading the source notes on this, I started thinking about what her role as a bridge actually entails.
It's a great visual.
Right. It's almost like she's this highly skilled bilingual diplomat navigating between two completely different, occasionally warring nations.
I love that. The translation aspect of corporate management is heavily under-discussed. How do you see the two nations in this scenario?
Well, okay, so on one side of the river, you have the land of the developers.
Right, yes.
And they speak a completely different language. They talk in Python, in sprints, in scrums, API integrations, technical debt. They care deeply about the elegance of the infrastructure.
So the builders.
Exactly. Then across the river, you have the land of the stakeholders and executives, and they do not care about the code at all.
Not even a little bit.
Right. They speak in ROI, KPIs, quarterly projections, synergistic deliverables.
So the developers are building the engine, and the executives are asking how fast the car can go, and neither knows how to talk to the other.
Precisely. Like if a stakeholder walks into the developer bullpen and says, hey guys, we need to maximize our synergistic revenue streams by Q3, the developers will just stare at them blankly.
Total silence.
And if the lead developer walks into the executive boardroom and starts giving this passionate speech about database refactoring, The executives will be asleep in 3 minutes.
Exactly. So Chloe stands over the water.
Yes. She takes the raw technical data from the tech side and translates it into financial value for the business side. She literally tells Marcus she translates highly technical jargon into actionable business strategies.
And observe how Marcus responds to this. He doesn't just nod passively. He actively participates in her analogy.
What does he say?
He says, hitting the nail on the head. So essentially, you're mitigating the friction between the tech guys and the boardroom.
Hitting the nail on the head, meaning to strike the precise center of an issue, to be exactly right.
But notice the psychological move Marcus is making here. By summarizing her point, back to mitigating the friction, he is demonstrating active listening.
Right.
This is exactly how spontaneous rapport is built. He is saying, I hear you, I understand the translation work you do, and I recognize the friction or the heat that must generate.
And there's a lot of heat, which actually brings us to the most surprising part of Chloe's pitch. Because when Marcus asks how the digital transition is going, Chloe does not give a fake, overly positive corporate PR response.
No, she avoids the instinct to feign perfection, which is so common.
She tells him, it's been quite the undertaking, to put it mildly. We're essentially overhauling the entire legacy infrastructure, which comes with its fair share of growing pains. She admits it is painful. She admits they're struggling.
Let's analyze growing pains, because this is a masterful strategic vulnerability.
Yeah, let's unpack that.
Originally, growing pains refer to the literal physical aches that children experience when their bones are growing faster than their muscles and tendons can accommodate.
Right, the biological discomfort of rapid expansion.
Exactly. In a corporate context, she is applying this to the legacy infrastructure, the old, outdated computer systems and workflows that are being overhauled or completely torn down and rebuilt.
But why admit to the difficulty at all? Like, if I'm trying to impress a senior colleague I just met, my instinct would be to say, Marcus, it's going flawlessly. We are ahead of schedule. Everything is perfect.
A lot of people would do that.
Right. Why is honesty a better strategy here?
Well, think about the effect of claiming perfection. If you tell a seasoned professional that a massive systemic overhaul of a legacy digital infrastructure is going flawlessly, what does that person immediately think of you?
They think I'm either lying to their face or I am so naive and disconnected from the actual work that I don't even know it's a disaster.
Precisely. Perfection is unapproachable, and in complex systems, it's always a lie.
Yeah.
Marcus has likely been through transitions before. He knows they're a nightmare. By acknowledging the growing pains, Chloe builds immediate trust through authenticity.
That makes a lot of sense.
She signals, I am a realist. I am in the trenches dealing with the actual friction. It makes her appear grounded, competent, and honest. She's sharing a tiny bit of vulnerability, admitting it is hard, but framing it within a context of ultimate growth.
She completely controls the narrative. It's not we are failing, it's we are experiencing the necessary pain of getting stronger.
Exactly.
And the result of this incredibly authentic, spontaneous communication is immediate. Marcus doesn't just wish her well and walk away. He asks for more of her time.
He does.
He says, I'd love to pick your brain sometime. Maybe explore some potential synergies.
Pick your brain. It is such a visceral idiom.
It really is. It sounds a bit like a zombie movie if you take it literally.
It does. But in the professional lexicon, it is a highly sophisticated, slightly informal way to ask for expert consultation without initiating a formal paid contract. It implies your mind holds valuable insights, and I want to extract a small sample of it. And he pairs it with potential synergies, which is the ultimate corporate shorthand for suggesting a collaboration where the combined output is greater than the sum of its parts, like 1 + 1 = 3.
And Chloe gracefully accepts. She says she is always keen to explore synergies, and they agree to pencil something in, meaning to lightly schedule it without the pressure of writing it in permanent ink.
Which is another great phrase.
Definitely. But taking a step back and looking at this entire first scenario, it really highlights a profound truth about modern career mobility.
What's that?
Spontaneous, unscripted small talk often leads to far more concrete professional opportunities than formal, highly scheduled presentations do.
It is the paradox of the boardroom. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's because in a boardroom, everyone is playing a character.
Right.
The conversational guard is all the way up. The executive is performing the role of the skeptical executive. The vendor is performing the role of the enthusiastic vendor. Everyone has a script. But in a coffee shop line, the script is thrown out. You are just two humans existing in the physical world. If you can demonstrate high-level competence, emotional intelligence, and honesty in that unscripted environment, it is incredibly magnetic. It proves who you really are when the PowerPoint slides are turned off.
That is exactly it. Chloe proved she wasn't just a job title. She was a thinker. She was a bridge. And she got the meeting.
And she really did.
However, the source material immediately pivots to the dark side of this reality.
Ah, yes. The unintended consequence of being highly competent.
Exactly. When you establish yourself as a problem solver who can gracefully navigate complexity, you suddenly become a target. People want your skills. People want your time.
Yep.
And that creates a whole new problem, one that requires an entirely different set of linguistic tools.
Which perfectly sets up the second scenario from the pod zone notes. Because if the first scenario was about articulating your value, the second scenario is about fiercely protecting it.
Setting impermeable boundaries.
Right. Because what happens when that spontaneous encounter leads to an unwanted demand on your time? We are forced to confront the single most difficult word in any language.
Saying no.
The word no carries so much psychological weight, especially in a professional or semi-professional context.
Oh, absolutely.
So let's look at the setup. We have Liam. Liam is a highly skilled freelance graphic designer, and he is at a social gathering. So just like Chloe, his guard is down. He's likely holding a drink, chatting with friends, not in work mode.
Just relaxing.
Right. And he is cornered by an acquaintance named David.
And David comes armed with a request that is wrapped in minimization.
Always dangerous.
He tells Liam he is launching a side hustle, a boutique coffee brand. He says he has knocked up a rudimentary logo.
Knocked up, meaning he threw it together quickly, and it almost certainly looks terrible.
He admits it looks amateurish, and then he springs the trap.
Here it comes.
He asks Liam to cast his expert eye over it and tweak the branding. He literally uses the most dangerous phrase in the freelance world. It shouldn't take you more than an hour. Oh, my blood pressure spikes just hearing that. It shouldn't take more than an hour. Any freelancer listening knows exactly what that means.
It is never an hour. It is a weekend of tedious, uncompensated labor disguised as a tiny, casual task.
The psychological hurdle Liam faces here is immense, and the source material spends significant time analyzing why this is so difficult.
Yeah.
Saying no to an acquaintance face-to-face feels incredibly abrasive. It feels like a personal rejection of the individual, not just a rejection of the task.
Right. You feel like a jerk.
You are terrified of sounding unsupportive or arrogant, but if you say yes, you are betraying your own time and your value.
So Liam has to walk this tightrope. He has to refuse the work without creating an enemy. And the transcript shows Liam employing a classic technique known as the compliment sandwich.
A staple of management communication.
Right. He starts with a layer of praise, inserts the rejection as the meat of the sandwich, and finishes with a layer of solutions. Let's look at the text. Liam says, "Oh, wow, congratulations on taking the plunge with the coffee brand, David. That sounds like an incredibly exciting venture."
That is the top piece of bread. He validates David's effort. Taking the plunge is an excellent idiom for committing to a risky new endeavor. It acknowledges David's bravery.
Then we get to the rejection. Liam says, "I'm incredibly flattered that you'd think of me, David. I really am. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to pass on this one."
To pass on this one, it is soft, it is casual, but it is absolute.
Okay, I have to stop here. I really need to push back on this entire concept.
By all means, what is the issue?
The compliment sandwich is universally taught in management seminars, but isn't it incredibly transparent at this point? Like, if someone compliment sandwiches me, I usually see right through it. I know exactly what they're doing. "Oh, your presentation was great, but we aren't funding your department, but keep up the good attitude."
Doesn't Liam risk sounding incredibly manipulative and fake here?
That is a very valid critique. The structural format of the compliment sandwich is widely recognized, and if it's executed poorly, it absolutely sounds patronizing.
Right.
If Liam had just said, "Cool coffee brand, but no thanks, good luck," it would have failed miserably. The reason Liam succeeds here isn't because of the sandwich structure itself, but because of the specific, highly calibrated vocabulary he uses immediately after saying no.
The justification.
Yes, he saves the interaction with how he justifies the rejection.
Okay, let's dig into that justification, because I agree, this is where the real C1 fluency shines. Liam says, "Unfortunately, I'm going to have to pass on this one. My bandwidth is completely tapped at the moment, and I'm juggling several demanding client deadlines." Bandwidth is completely tapped. This is the genius of Liam's response. Let's look at the history of that word. What does bandwidth mean in its original literal sense?
Well, it's a telecommunications term. It refers to the capacity of a wired network connection to transmit data. High bandwidth means you can download a movie quickly. Low bandwidth means your connection is choked and slow.
Exactly. It is a logistical, mechanical measurement of a machine's capacity. But over the last 2 decades, corporate culture has co-opted this technological term and applied it to human psychology.
Yeah, we use it all the time now.
We now use it to refer to a person's mental capacity, emotional energy, or available time.
But why do we do that? Why do we treat human brains like servers?
Because it removes the emotion from our limitations. By saying his bandwidth is tapped, meaning drained completely empty like a keg of beer, Liam is entirely depersonalizing the rejection.
Oh, that is brilliant. He isn't saying, David, I don't want to work on your terrible coffee logo because you aren't paying me and I want to watch TV this weekend. That would be a personal choice.
Right. Instead, he is essentially saying, the mechanical server of my brain has 0 gigabytes of processing power left to allocate to any new tasks.
Wow.
He makes the rejection a matter of immutable logistical physics, not personal preference. It is not that David's project is unworthy. It is that Liam's machine is currently at maximum capacity. You cannot argue with a full server.
It completely removes Liam's ego and David's ego from the equation. It is just a statement of fact.
Yes.
But David, being the classic persistent acquaintance, doesn't immediately give up. He pushes back. He says, oh, come on, surely you can squeeze it in. It doesn't have to be a masterpiece, just a quick polish.
Squeeze it in. This is a classic pressure tactic. David is attempting to verbally minimize the size of the request to maximize Liam's guilt for saying no. He's trying to make Liam feel unreasonable.
And Liam's defense against this pressure is just a masterclass in linguistic aikido. He doesn't get angry. He holds his ground and says, I genuinely wish I could help you out, but as a rule, I don't take on ad hoc projects when my schedule is this tight. I'd hate to commit to looking at your branding and then deliver a subpar result because I'm spread too thin. You deserve someone who can dedicate proper time to it.
Let's break down the defense mechanisms here. First, he invokes a rule. He says he doesn't take on ad hoc projects.
Ad hoc. It's a Latin phrase meaning to this or for this specific situation.
Right. And in the modern professional world, an ad hoc project is an unplanned, spontaneous task that circumvents normal strategic planning and intake processes.
Ah, I see.
By defining David's request as an ad hoc project, Liam elevates his own professional boundaries. He is communicating, I am a professional who operates with strategic structure. I do not perform random, unstructured labor on a whim. It is a very polite way of demanding respect for his process.
But the real kill shot, the phrase that completely disarms David, is when Leah explains why he won't do it. He says he doesn't want to deliver a subpar result because he is spread too thin.
Spread too thin. Think of the physical imagery of that.
Like a small pat of butter scraped over a massive piece of toast. You try to cover too much surface area and you end up with nothing of substance anywhere.
I love this maneuver so much. Because what is Liam actually doing here?
He is framing his refusal to help as an act of service to David.
Exactly. Explain how he achieves that.
He's basically saying, David, I respect you and your new coffee brand far too much to give it half of my attention. If I squeeze you in, I will give you bad work. You deserve a designer who can dedicate proper time to your vision. He uses his own lack of bandwidth to protect David's project. He turns a firm rejection into an act of professional integrity.
As I said, linguistic aikido. He takes David's aggressive, pressuring energy and redirects it into a statement of mutual respect. David literally has no counter-argument to this.
What could he even say?
If David were to continue arguing, he would essentially have to say, no, Liam, I demand that you disrespect my project and give me terrible, rushed work. Which no one is going to say. Liam has logically boxed him in with kindness.
And then we get the bottom piece of the compliment sandwich, the solution. Liam says, tell you what, I can shoot you an email with a list of incredibly talented junior designers who are currently looking to build their portfolios. Their rates are highly competitive.
He offers a highly constructive path forward. He solves David's underlying problem, the need for a designer, while firmly keeping himself entirely out of the execution phase.
And David accepts defeat. He says, that would actually be brilliant, thanks, Liam. No hard feelings. And Liam replies, none at all. I can't wait to see the final product.
The boundary was successfully defended, and the social relationship was fully preserved.
We have all encountered a David. We all get asked to squeeze something in by someone who doesn't respect our time. If you take away anything from this analysis, memorize the concept of being spread too thin.
Highly recommended.
It is the ultimate diplomatic shield. It frames your no, not as selfishness or laziness, but as a fierce commitment to the quality of your existing obligations. It makes you sound like the most responsible person in the room while you are explicitly rejecting someone.
It is an absolutely vital tool. But we must acknowledge that Liam's scenario assumes you have the opportunity to prevent a bad situation before it starts. He used diplomacy to stop a boundary from being crossed.
Right, but what happens when the boundary has already been shattered?
What if the spontaneous English you need isn't to prevent a fire, but to put one out? What if you are the one who messed up?
Which beautifully transitions us into our third and final scenario from the pod zone notes, diffusing the bomb. We are moving from boundary setting to retroactive conflict resolution, from linguistic defense to linguistic accountability.
This is undoubtedly the most difficult terrain to navigate in any language, let alone a second language, because emotions are already running high. The adrenaline is already in the bloodstream. Logic is taking a backseat to ego.
The source material details this final scenario with painful realism. We have two colleagues, Sophia and James. Earlier in the day, during a morning strategy alignment meeting with the executive board, Sophia made a blunt comment that inadvertently undermined James's work in front of his bosses.
Specifically, she publicly critiqued his marketing budget projections. Now, the natural human instinct after a disastrous public interaction like this is avoidance. To hide in your office, avoid eye contact in the break room, and just let the resentment silently fester.
Definitely.
But as the source notes, Sophia makes the brave, proactive choice to pull James aside later that afternoon and confront the tension head on.
And doing this requires her to walk a microscopic linguistic tightrope. She has to take accountability for her mistake, but she cannot over-apologize.
Why is over-apologizing dangerous here?
Well, because if she grovels, if she acts overly dramatic and says, James, I'm so stupid, I'm so incredibly sorry, I ruined everything, she places an unfair emotional burden on James to comfort her.
Right. He has to tell her it's okay.
Exactly. It also makes her appear weak and emotionally volatile to a colleague. But on the flip side, if she doesn't apologize enough, or if she makes excuses, she seems arrogant and callous. She has to hit the precise, ringing note of professional contrition.
Let's look at how she initiates the repair. She approaches James at his desk and asks if he has a brief moment. When he agrees, she says, I just wanted to touch base regarding the strategy alignment meeting this morning. I've been reflecting on the exchange we had about the marketing budget, and I wanted to clear the air.
Touch base. A classic corporate idiom originating from baseball, meaning to quickly check in. But the heavy lifter in her opening statement is her stated goal. I wanted to clear the air.
It is a masterful opening gambit. Think about the physical imagery of that phrase, clearing the air. When a room is filled with thick smoke or a heavy humidity or a foul odor, it is physically uncomfortable for everyone present. You cannot breathe easily.
Right.
By stating she wants to clear the air, Sophia is implicitly acknowledging that an uncomfortable, heavy atmosphere currently exists between them, and her goal is to ventilate it, to restore a clean, breathable environment for their working relationship.
It is so much more effective than saying, I want to talk about why you were angry at me, or I want to talk about my mistake. It neutralizes the emotion and focuses on the shared environment.
It makes the goal mutual. They both want to breathe clean air.
So James responds, and he doesn't sugarcoat it. He says, oh. Right. Well, I'll admit, I was a little taken aback by your comments. It felt like you were completely dismissing my department's projections in front of the board.
He is honest. He was taken aback. This is a phrase with nautical origins, referring to a ship whose sails are suddenly pressed flat against the mast by a sudden shift in wind, stopping all forward momentum.
Oh, that's interesting.
He was negatively surprised, startled, and his momentum was halted by her unexpected critique.
And look at how Sophia handles that raw honesty. She doesn't get defensive. She doesn't say, well, you shouldn't have been surprised. She says, and that is exactly why I wanted to speak with you. I realized after the fact that my phrasing was incredibly blunt, and it wasn't my intention to step on your toes or undermine your team's hard work.
Step on your toes. Another vividly physical idiom.
Like dancing too clumsily and crushing your partner's feet.
Exactly. To step on someone's toes means to offend them by encroaching on their established area of responsibility or authority. She is explicitly acknowledging his territory, the marketing budget, and apologizing for trampling on it.
But then James admits why the toe-stepping hurt so deeply. He says, I appreciate you saying that. It just came across as highly adversarial, especially since we had agreed on those figures privately yesterday.
The context shifts. She didn't just critique him. She ambushed him with a critique regarding numbers they had already settled in private.
That is a massive professional betrayal. Whether she intended it or not, she made him look foolish in front of leadership. This is the critical juncture of the conversation. Sophia has to explain why she did it without making an excuse that invalidates his bruised ego.
And she navigates it perfectly. She starts by validating his emotional reality. You are completely justified in feeling that way. Then she delivers the masterstroke phrase of the entire scenario. It seems we got our wires crossed.
Got our wires crossed.
Okay.
When I was reviewing the notes on this phrase, I realized I had a really strong visualization for it. Have you ever seen photos of those old 1920s telephone switchboards?
Oh, the massive walls with the operators plugging in cables. Yeah.
Exactly. The physical infrastructure of early communication. The operators would sit in front of thousands of jacks, taking a long braided wire from one hole and physically plugging it into another to connect two callers. If the operator plugged the wrong wire into the wrong jack, the communication failed, the call went to the wrong house, the message was garbled. By using this idiom, got our wires crossed, Sophia is making the conflict a mechanical failure.
Let's analyze why that mechanical framing is so vital for de-escalation. What happens if Sophia says, "James, you misunderstood me," or even, "James, I miscommunicated my point"?
Well, if she says those things, she is assigning direct personal blame. It creates a binary of winner and loser. It's either James's fault for being a poor listener or Sophia's fault for being a poor speaker.
Precisely. But we got our wires crossed implies a mutual systemic error. Sophia is essentially saying, "James, you and I are both highly rational, intelligent people. We both sent out good signals, but somewhere in the complex, stressful switchboard of that boardroom, the physical wires tangled. A mechanical error occurred that belongs to neither of us."
But let me push back on that for a second. If she was the one who made the blunt comment, isn't saying we got our wires crossed a bit of a cop-out? Isn't she dodging actual accountability by blaming the system?
It's a nuanced line to walk, but I would argue it is not a cop-out because of what she says immediately afterward.
What's that?
The phrase, "wires crossed," simply diffuses the immediate emotional heat. It puts out the fire. Once the fire is out, then she takes personal accountability for the spark. She explains her intent. "I was attempting to play devil's advocate regarding the Q3 risks, but I executed it poorly. I should have framed it as a collaborative question rather than a critique."
Playing devil's advocate. Let's look at that phrase. It originally comes from the Catholic Church, right? The Advocatus Diaboli.
Yes, the official whose job was to argue against the canonization of a saint to ensure the evidence of miracles was rock solid.
Wow.
In a corporate setting, it means arguing a contrary point, not necessarily because you believe it, but to stress test an idea by attacking it to see if it holds up.
It's a very common corporate exercise, but honestly, people who constantly play devil's advocate can be incredibly annoying.
They can be. And that is why Sophia's admission here saves the interaction. She admits she executed it poorly. She owns the bad delivery. She had a valid intellectual intent stress testing the budget, but she chose the wrong tone and the wrong venue.
And James accepts this logic. Because she validated his feelings, blamed the system for the initial confusion, and then owned her poor execution, James can drop his defensive posture. He matches her vulnerability with his own. He says, "I see. Well, in that context, it makes more sense. I suppose I was just on the defensive because the stakeholders were in the room."
He admits his ego was bruised because the bosses were watching. This is the magic of clearing the air. When one person drops their shield and takes accountability, the reciprocal social pressure almost always forces the other person to drop their shield as well.
And Sophia seals the repair. She promises a change in future behavior. Moving forward, I'll ensure we are entirely on the same page before going into those high-stakes reviews. I value our working relationship too much to let a miscommunication drive a wedge between us.
She explicitly states the value of the relationship. She refuses to let a wedge, a literal tool used to violently split solid wood apart, be driven between them.
And James responds with the ultimate idiom of corporate forgiveness. He says, "Agreed. Thanks for pulling me aside to address it, Sophia. Water under the bridge. Let's focus on the rollout tomorrow."
Water under the bridge.
We started this hour with Chloe acting as the bridge, and now we are ending with water flowing under it.
It is the perfect closing imagery. Consider the physics of a river. What does water under a bridge do? It flows away downstream, it is gone, it cannot be brought back, its current cannot be reversed, and it no longer matters to the people standing on the bridge.
Right.
By declaring the conflict water under the bridge, James is officially stating that the issue is past, forgiven, and forgotten. He is signaling a complete return to normal operations.
It is a beautiful resolution. And the core relational lesson from this source material is that Sophia valued the long-term working relationship more than her short-term pride.
She proved a deeply counterintuitive truth about human dynamics. Addressing friction directly actually builds stronger professional bonds than avoiding it.
It really does.
Think about their dynamic now. By surviving this conflict, Sophia and James trust each other more today than they did yesterday. James now has empirical evidence that if Sophia messes up, she will not hide. She will own it, apologize, and correct it. That creates immense psychological safety.
Wow. Okay. We have covered a massive amount of psychological and linguistic ground today. We have traversed anxious coffee shop encounters, awkward party requests, and highly tense office apologies. So if we synthesize all of this, what does this all mean for you, the modern professional?
Distilling all three of these pod zone scenarios down to their essence, the core message is this. Delivering a spontaneous pitch, defending your boundaries gracefully, and resolving interpersonal conflict are the true hallmarks of fluency. It requires vastly more than a robust dictionary. It requires profound emotional and linguistic intelligence.
It requires knowing when to use layman's terms to act as a bridge for someone, rather than burying them in jargon. It requires knowing how to mechanize your own limitations and protect your bandwidth when you are spread too thin. And it requires the absolute courage to clear the air when wires get crossed, rather than hiding in your office.
These phrases, these idioms, are not just colorful vocabulary words. They are vital, strategic tools for navigating the terrifying complexity of human egos, corporate power dynamics, and professional demands.
We've all had those moments where we freeze. The next time you are put on the spot, whether by a senior executive or an annoying acquaintance, we want you to remember these frameworks. Lean on these specific phrases. Let the concepts of being spread too thin or letting a past mistake be water under the bridge cement themselves into your daily communication. If you understand the psychology behind them, the words will flow naturally when the pressure is on.
And as you incorporate these tools into your own life, I want to leave you with a final, perhaps slightly provocative question to ponder on your own.
Ooh, a lingering philosophical question to end on. I love it.
We have just spent the last hour meticulously dissecting how these highly polished, standardized corporate idioms can protect our boundaries, elevate our status, and save our professional relationships. But if idioms are the ultimate bridge between people, what happens to our deep, fundamental authenticity when we rely too heavily on this polished corporate speak?
Oh, that is a heavy question.
Think about it deeply. When we casually say our bandwidth is tapped, instead of simply looking a colleague in the eye and saying, I am completely exhausted, I am overwhelmed, and I cannot take on one more thing, are these clever, mechanized phrases actually helping us connect as vulnerable human beings? Or are they highly effective linguistic shields that, while keeping us professionally safe, ultimately prevent us from truly being seen? At what point does diplomatic fluency become a sterile barrier to genuine human connection?
That is an incredible thought to chew on. We started this deep dive talking about how spontaneous human interaction isn't clean like an X-ray. It's murky. It's muddy. And maybe these freezes are the necessary armor we wear to survive wading through that muddy water. Whether that armor is keeping us safe or just weighing us down and isolating us, well, that's up to you to decide in your next spontaneous encounter. Thank you so much for joining us, for pulling up a chair, and for diving deep with us today. Keep practicing those boundaries, keep building those bridges, and we will see you next time. Take care, everyone.